Would I rather lose to Saquon Barkley? Would I rather lose to Jalen Hurts throwing the ball down the field on me? Now, no defensive coordinator wants to come out and give up 60-yard splash plays, 70-yard, 80-yard. Giving up explosives is the worst thing you can do if you're a defense coordinator. The problem is for most teams, if you're talking about preventing explosives, you're talking about the pass game. But for the Philadelphia Eagles, they're getting their explosives out of the run game, Saquon Barkley. So what are we going to see Steve Spagnuolo try to bring to the table? I went back and looked. I'll pull it up here real quick. Last time that the Philadelphia Eagles played the Kansas City Chiefs in the 2022 Super Bowl, the leading rusher for the Philadelphia Eagles in that game that the Philadelphia Eagles lost 38-35, the leading rusher, apart from Jalen Hurts, which should be a clue, Jalen Hurts had 15 carries in that game for 70 yards. The leading rusher was Kenneth Gainwell, 7 rushing attempts for 21 yards, averaged 3.0 yards per carry. Sounds terrible. Miles Sanders was even worse. 7 rushing attempts for 16 yards, averaged 2.3 yards per carry. They didn't have a good run game that year. If you remember back to that year when these two teams played 2 years ago, Philadelphia Eagles were this high-potent, high-flying team in the first half of games. They threw the ball to put up points on you, and then they took the foot off the pedal, slowed down in the second half, and ran the ball a ton when they were sitting there with a 13-17 point lead. So you look at their year-to-date, like full season stats, and it looks like, hey, this team likes to run the ball a little bit. No, they were a pass-first team in 2022, passed the ball a ton, and then they ran the ball late with a win. But they passed to build a lead. This team is very different. This Eagles team is very different. That team couldn't run the ball. This team not only can run the ball, they start games running the ball. They come out the gates running the ball. You saw that, what was it, 70-yard run, 60-yard run by Saquon Barkley against the Washington Commanders. Now, interestingly, you take that 60-yard run out of it, Saquon Barkley averaged 4.1 yards per carry on all of his other runs against the Washington Commanders. I know you can't do that. I know you run the ball at times as you're calling run plays in the hopes that one of them will break. One of these runs will bust open. So you can live with 4.1 yards per carry as long as you get that one massive gain. And that's why some people, I agree that it is wrong to take out the one gain, but it's also helpful from a success rate perspective to understand, are these runs generally speaking successful? Are they setting you up behind the sticks or are they not? Holding the Commanders, who have a terrible run defense, holding the Philadelphia Eagles to 4.1 yards per carry, aside from that very first run by Saquon Barkley, is pretty good. And the Kansas City Chiefs obviously have a better run defense, though it's gotten a little bit leaky, have a better run defense than do the Washington Commanders. It certainly looked like James Cook could run the football pretty effectively against this Kansas City Chiefs run defense last week. But let's get back to the Kansas City Chiefs defense and what are they going to try to take away here from the Philadelphia Eagles? You don't want your defense to be on the field all afternoon. And that could potentially happen if you don't stop the run. In addition, with this Eagles team, then you can also give up those big plays because they are an explosive run team. Jalen Hurts, though, looks great. That was one of his best games that he's played of the season against the Commanders. Now, again, it's the Commanders' pass defense. The Chiefs have much better cover corners. So the Chiefs are going to be able to have, Spags is going to have more confidence in those guys, leaving them on there if they do want to play a little bit of man coverage, which they tend to play more than usual. The issue is Jalen Hurts has big splits. They are much better against man and much worse against zone. But here's some of the numbers for Jalen Hurts, and I've shared these 2 weeks ago. I gave you guys a real early Super Bowl preview, the earliest in the industry, about what Jalen Hurts is struggling with this season and how that could impact him in the future. And it started with their first game that they played in the postseason. I told you about this, but let's go back to this about Jalen Hurts taking on so much pressure, despite the fact that his offensive line ranks number 6 in pass block win rate. If you guys are new, I'm going to relay these stats again. If you guys have been here for several weeks, you've heard me, because this is a talking point that's quite important and could have a major impact of this game. Got to reiterate it. You rank 6th in pass block win rate, which is the rate at which you are preventing your defensive linemen from getting past you towards the quarterback. So whichever offensive line, you're a guard, you're a tackle, you're the center, what's your man-on-man blocking assignment? And if that man gets past you, how long did it take to do that? And you lost that rep. That's how ESPN uses the chips to track pass block win rate. So it's on a player-by-player basis, but they're the 6th best. And yet, despite being the 6th best, Philadelphia Eagles quarterback, specifically Jalen Hurts, has been pressured at the number 2 highest rate in the NFL, behind only Deshaun Watson. 38 out of 39 qualifying quarterbacks. Terrible in terms of allowing pressure to come. He has scrambled or taken a sack on dropbacks 18% of the time. That's right around Caleb Williams of the Chicago Bears. For some context, what does 18% mean? And when we watch the Chicago Bears this past year, and we're trying to evaluate Caleb Williams, one of the biggest arguments in favor, in support of Caleb, is his offensive line sucks. Offensive line's giving up so much pressure. Caleb's running for his life back there. Now, there's obviously a lot of other issues that need to be resolved. Hopefully, for their sake, Ben Johnson helps in that regard. But one of the big issues was Caleb under pressure, scrambling 18% of his dropbacks. That's exactly what Jalen Hurts has been doing this year too. But he has the 6th best offensive line in pass block win rate. The reason that he's struggling, and the reason that he's scrambling 18% of the time, and the reason why he's got the 2nd highest pressure rate taken, is because his time to throw is horrible. Back in 2022, when he went to the Super Bowl against this Kansas City Chiefs team, he averaged 2.68 seconds to throw, which was league average. He had the 9th highest rate of throws within 2.5 seconds. This year, his time to throw is 3.1 seconds, which is the highest in the NFL. The highest. He ranks 29th in rate of throws that come within 2.5 seconds. He has the number 1 highest rate of throws where he holds on to the football for 4 or more seconds. So you might say, well, okay, he's hunting. He's hunting explosives down the field. He's holding onto the ball. If you're trying to defend him and you're not looking at all the other numbers, that's what you might assume. He's looking for big plays, so he's holding on to the ball more. Wrong. He is averaging a lower target depth this year than he was in 2022. He's throwing the ball shorter this year. His air yards per attempt in 2022, when he got rid of the ball faster, 8.1 air yards per attempt. This year, he's averaging 7.8 yards per attempt, which is 20th highest. So this is where, if I'm Spags, I would be potentially looking to zone blitz Jalen Hurts. Spags is brilliant with the way that he blitzes off the corners, off the edges. Like, the Eagles are obviously going to have to figure this out and be prepared. But that Super Bowl that Jalen Hurts played again in 2022, I mentioned to you the running backs, and they weren't having success running the football, and their leading running back was Kenneth Gainwell, who's not even a starting caliber running back, and he got 21 total yards in the Super Bowl, averaged 3 yards a carry. Jalen Hurts threw the ball for 304 yards in that game. Devonta Smith had 100, and A.J. Brown had 96 and 1 touchdown. This was a much more well-oiled passing attack in 2022 than it is today. Jalen Hurts was playing much better in 2022 than he is today. He was taking less pressure. He was throwing the ball deeper, more accurately, more efficiently, taking fewer negative plays with these sacks and scrambles and problems once the ball was snapped to him than he is in 2024. They obviously have a much better run game, so that's where Spags is going to have to make those adjustments. Figure out a way to slow down Saquon Barkley, force Jalen Hurts to beat the man coverage at times, but also give him some zone looks with some creative blitzes, because Jalen Hurts is much worse against zone coverage. Now, on the other side of the ball, you've got Patrick Mahomes, and Andy Reid going up against Vic Fangio, which is a great matchup. And you could go back and watch some of the games that Patrick Mahomes played when Vic was coaching elsewhere, because he's made a variety of different stops in the NFL. There was a couple games, I believe, last year for the Miami Dolphins where Vic was there. You also can look back at prior years when Vic was involved in helping game plan against Patrick Mahomes. It is a real cat and mouse battle. The one thing you have to remember about Vic, though, with his defense is it takes a while to master his defense. If it's year one with Vic, and this truly was year one, he was here in the past helping out a little bit, but calling everything, it's not great year one, year two. Week one, week two, week three. It gets a lot better down the stretch. And the Philadelphia Eagles defense obviously has played really well. It's a hard nut to crack in terms of trying to find the soft areas. There are some available over the middle. You've got Travis Kelce. You've got Noah Gray. You've got opportunities to attack some of those weaker spots. But keep in mind, like in the 2022 Super Bowl, when Travis Kelce was targeted 6 times, caught 6 passes, and gained 81 yards through the air with 1 touchdown, the Philadelphia Eagles used to be the worst at covering tight ends. You could set your clock and bank on tight ends going off against the Philadelphia Eagles. They were horrific at covering tight ends. Now, they had some injuries here in the playoffs, but by and large, they still are improved over what they once were. Over that 22 season, they are better at defending tight ends. They used to just be, because there was no capital or revenue spent at that linebacker position. They just didn't care. They were all about the pass rush and then coverage, and they didn't care about the underneath tight end targets. They have improved in that regard this season. It's not elite because of some injuries, but they are better than what they were. But it still is, if you're going to say what's the weak part, what's that scale on the dragon that's might be the soft spot, this would be the soft spot. And the Chiefs have a way to attack that soft spot. The Chiefs this year are the ones who don't have much of a run game. In that Super Bowl, Isiah Pacheco ran for 5.1 yards per carry. Jerick McKinnon ran for 8.5 yards per carry. They had 2 running backs. Isiah had 15 carries. McKinnon had 4. So it was primarily Isiah Pacheco as the bell cow, and he was putting up good yardage on the ground. And then the change of pace was putting up even better yardage on the ground at 8.5 yards per carry. Isiah Pacheco looks like a shell of himself right now. They're obviously not using him quite as much, and that's because he's not as productive. Kareem Hunt has looked solid in stand-in. Kareem Hunt is sort of more of, I mean, he's a bigger back, great for like bad weather, bad turf. Like now you're in turf. Now it's a fast track surface down there in New Orleans. Which one of these backs is going to look the best? Which one of these backs is going to get the most opportunities? Will Andy Reid just decide to throw short underneath passes? Because the Philadelphia Eagles, one of the things the Philadelphia Eagles do really well, and I've already gone through my notes. The Philadelphia Eagles are great defending deep passes. This is the Philadelphia Eagles right there. The number 1 team in the NFL in terms of completion rate on deep passes, 25 plus yards in the air. They're the best. In terms of EPA per attempt on passes thrown, 15 plus yards in the air. They're at the top again. They're the best. Look at where the Kansas City Chiefs are at percentage of passes thrown. 15 plus yards, 3rd or 4th lowest in the NFL, and EPA per attempt on those passes thrown, 15 plus yards in the air, worst in the NFL. Good news for the Kansas City Chiefs, though, and these numbers, by the way, in case you're like wondering, week 9 to 17, not the very beginning of the season. This favors the Chiefs a little bit more because they've got their receivers there now. Some of these guys, Xavier Worthy, they're trying to figure out what to do with the guy the first few weeks of the season. They've got a really good way to use Xavier Worthy now. They also have Marquise Brown back healthy, who wasn't there during the beginning of the year. So this Kansas City Chiefs team is coming along a lot better now from a receiving perspective. but they're still not this explosive downfield team, and that's not really the way that you want to even attack the Philadelphia Eagles. This pass rush, though, of the Philadelphia Eagles is not the same type of pass rush that the Chiefs played back in 2022 either. This Philadelphia Eagles pass rush, if you look at them right here, where are we at? Right here. They have one of the highest pressure rates in the league, and they have like the lowest blitz rate. One of the lowest blitz rates in the entire NFL. They get natural pressure. And so who's going to win that matchup? You know, Spags is going to try to send pressure, disrupt Jalen Hurts, have him cause problems when he's under pressure where he stinks. Jalen Hurts, when pressured this year, 37 out of 37 quarterbacks in EPA per attempt, 37 out of 37 quarterbacks in success rate, 32 out of 37 quarterbacks in sack rate, 32 out of 37 quarterbacks in yards per attempt. Last year, he was top 10 in all those rankings. So the Eagles have to worry about the blitzes coming from Steve Spagnuolo, and then Spags is going to want to put Jalen Hurts under pressure. The Eagles aren't going to be blitzing Patrick Mahomes. They're going to try to get natural pressure. Who wins that battle is going to go a long way to who wins this game. That Eagles defensive line are beasts. The Chiefs offensive line, not quite as great as in years past and struggling a little bit this season. Who wins that battle?